Thank you, Nir. So you heard about the biology, and I think you only got a glimpse of the fascinating things that are being done in academia, and these are the solutions for the future. This is going to be what will be coming out of academia. The innovation will help us shape food security in the future. And for the next talks, we'll be switching gears and hear more about the nutritional part and how this food affects us. I know many of you are waiting to hear it already. So our next speaker, I'm happy to introduce our next speaker, Professor Lisa Sasson from New York University. And Lisa will talk to us about overconsumption of food and nutrients in a world of plenty. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you, Efrat. I'm so happy to be here. It was a year in planning, so I can't tell you what it means to be here and see all of you here. We are switching. Mine is not as academic, so I want to warn you first than our last two presentations. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about overconsumption and a little bit how did we get there. So here are some key facts. They are astonishing, but let's talk about obesity as a global issue, because worldwide obesity has more than doubled since 1980. So in 2014, there are more than 1.9 billion adults, and 600 million were obese. So we have a huge problem. 39% of adults were overweight in 2014, and 13% were obese. And most of the world's population lives in countries where overweight and obesity kills more people than underweight. 42 million children are under the age of 5 were overweight or obese in 2013. And the reason this is such a critical problem is obesity is preventable. And I think that the theme of my talk today is I'm going to be talking mainly a little bit about diabetes and obesity, but to reinforce what Saul Litzman said is that these diseases are preventable. There's something we can do about it, and that's why we're all here today. So when we talk about obesity, we use something known as BMI, and we have different classification, and that's a way you could get an idea of how overweight someone is. And it's not about aesthetics, it's about the link between overweight, obesity, where the weight is on your body, and your risk of disease development. So it's all about disease and health. It's not an aesthetic issue. And if we look here, we can see that obesity in the center, central obesity, is the most dangerous. And you see this more commonly in men, but after women reach menopause, they start to deposit more weight, usually in their abdomen, and they too are at great risk for development of certain diseases, such as cardiac disease and diabetes. There are so many medical complications. I'm not going to read all of these on the slide, but this is why it's such an issue. So if we link all these medical complications to the first thing I said, this is preventable. And when we look at healthcare costs, and we're trying to figure out how to reduce healthcare costs, here's the answer. We have to deal with obesity and diabetes, and we wouldn't have the healthcare costs we do. The money should be put into prevention. And so you could see all of these complications, from heart disease to colon, et cetera, et cetera. And then, to me, what is even more tragic is how it affects children. And children are becoming more and more overweight all over the world, here in Israel, in America. And children, too, develop a high risk for all these diseases, not to mention the psychosocial issues, the toll it takes on them. So the next thing is something we term diabesity. And what it means is that you typically develop this diabetes later in life, and it's associated with being obese. So unfortunately, a lot of people think that as you get older, it's just natural to develop diabetes. And the drug companies have done a wonderful job of convincing us that that's true. In fact, there's so many advertisements and commercials on television in the States that just, as a matter of fact, say, you know, your blood sugar is high, we have all these medications, you see all these older adults seem so happy, enjoying life, as though, you know, once you're in your 50s, you just develop it naturally. Fortunately, actually, that's not true. So being overweight or obese, and that would be about a BMI of 30, puts you at a greater risk of developing type 2 diabetes. So it's not type 1 when you don't produce any insulin. Type 2 diabetes, particularly if you have central obesity. That puts you most at risk. Obese people are up to 80 times more likely to develop diabetes type 2 than those with a normal, healthy BMI. Obesity has been linked to insulin resistance, which contributes to type 2 diabetes. And of course, there's always other risk factors. There's family, history, genetics, ethnicity, age. But even if you have a genetic predisposition, you're at more risk, but it doesn't mean that you're destined. So you have to just lead a healthier lifestyle to reduce your risk. And here are some alarming facts about diabetes. About 422 million people worldwide have diabetes, and this has risen dramatically. You could see some of those numbers. And global diabetes among adults has risen from 4.7% in 1980 to 8.5% in 2014. So we're seeing this worldwide. Its prevalence has been rising more rapidly in middle and low-income countries, and diabetes is one of the leading causes of death in the world. And of course, all of the other devastating things that happen when diabetes is not managed: amputation, blindness, kidney failure. And again, my message is type 2 diabetes can be prevented. So we kind of know these are the issues, but we have the answers. And this is what I think is so frustrating for so many of us. So look at, this is some of the countries, and you could see where diabetes is rising globally. And I have 2 years, 1980 and 2014. And you could see this truly is a very important issue. And there's something known as the double burden of malnutrition, that many low and middle income countries are now facing a double burden of disease. They're dealing with infectious disease and undernutrition, and an increased rate of diseases associated with obesity, being overweight, particularly in urban settings. It's not uncommon to find undernutrition and obesity existing side by side, this paradox. So, how did we get here? I wish I had 2 hours, but I don't. So I'm going to go through this very, very quickly, because and there's so many things I'm leaving out. But we live in an environment where I say, why isn't everyone obese? Everywhere we go, there's food. We eat all the time. We live in a world where, as Kelly Brownell says, we live in a toxic environment. We eat a lot of highly processed food. Most of it is already pre-digested for us, so our body doesn't even have to digest food anymore. We rapidly absorb these calories. We're less active. We start to store a lot more fat, which is a good thing. That's how we survive, so we're just efficient. So we store energy, which is good in terms of famine, but most of us don't live in terms of famine. We're less active. We have more stress. Sleep issues. When we're tired, we think we need a pick-me-up, so what do? You have your cup of coffee with some cookies or a piece of cake because you're tired. Has the opposite effect. And then it just goes on, and this circle. And have a little bit more detailed slides, and we just sit too much. It's becoming a public health issue. I mean, everyone has their Fitbit now to remind them to get up. We got to move. Our bodies were meant to move, not to sit. We're meant to be active. It's not a luxury, it's the way our bodies were designed. So we have to be more aware of that, especially with children. So look how many hours, in 24 hours, most of us are sitting between work and sleep about over 15 hours a day. And we're becoming very lazy. I mean, my favorite is walking your dog. I've seen this, I know it's amazing, but these are real pictures, these aren't the Google ones. We're just less active. We sit, we have long commutes. Look, it took me about 40 minutes to get from Tel Aviv, Hayakon here in a car. It's just, we just sit in cars for so long now. And kids aren't playing enough outside. They need to go outside and play. They need the sun. They need the vitamin D. That's the best way to get it. Go out and play. So we have kids just not being active enough. I mean, Israeli kids used to be out all the time. I mean, just like American kids, but certainly here. And now you see they're home a lot with their appliances. And we just eat everywhere. It hasn't reached this point here yet, thank goodness. You don't see people, I don't think, eating meals in their car yet and walking down the street and eating a meal. But this is a very typical scene in the States where people just eat everywhere you go. You stop at a traffic light, people are having their meal. You walk down the street, you have your meal. Unfortunately, this is a very typical family picture where they sit in front of the TV, fast food, don't talk, don't communicate. The first thing Elliot said is that a family that eats together stays together. I don't consider this, though, the type of eating together he had in mind. And that's a picture from the subway. You see people eating all over the subway. It's awful. The smell, people just give their children food. The whole idea of the concept of a meal is just eating anywhere, where it should be sitting down with family and friends with a table with a fork and a knife and eating. Food is everywhere. I'm giving you some stores equivalent in Israel, where everywhere you go, there's food. I walked into a store called Staples in the States. It's Office Depot here. And as soon as you walk in, the first thing you see is huge boxes of candy. And I just didn't understand. I'm supposed to go in there and get office supplies. Why is the first thing I see candy? And I didn't make the connection so that you buy it for your office so when you're working you can eat. And that is a typical example of what we mean by a toxic environment. So everywhere you go, there's an opportunity to eat all the time. And then there's all the junk food advertising to kids. And it works, by the way, because these advertisers wouldn't spend the millions and millions of dollars they do if it didn't work. And we know that 40% of children's diet comes from added sugars and unhealthy fats. And American children, I think Israeli kids are doing better, don't consume many fruits and vegetables. And in America, there's this whole concept of kids' foods, that kids don't eat what adults do. Well, here too, to a large degree, that when you go to a restaurant, there's, of course, the kid menu. And I just came back from Italy where I teach, and the concept of a kid's menu in a restaurant in Italy doesn't exist. Kids go to a restaurant, you eat what your family eats. But kids now think that kids are supposed to eat things that look like dinosaurs and are neon green, that there's no way they eat adult food. That's for adults. We eat that other cool-looking food that has the bubble lettering and has all those colors and shapes, and that's not true, and we bought into it, and there's something we have to do. And that also, hopefully, will be a theme of this conference. Sizes are getting bigger and bigger, and a lot of people just assume if it's liquids, the calories don't count. They do. All calories count. And you can see when you have more calories, you have more of everything, and you have all the junk food. I mean, this is not as bad here because fortunately McDonald's is still expensive here, but McDonald's is dirt cheap in the States. For a dollar, you can get anything. They have the dollar meal. And then the confusion of the label. They're purposely confusing. They're so confusing. I don't understand it, and I have to teach it. They purposely make it so you have no idea. I mean, we have hopefully this new label, which will help a lot, and people they don't know what to do. So my advice is, try not to buy food with labels. If you buy a lot of fruits and vegetables and plant-based foods, it doesn't have a label. I know a sweet potato is not attractive. It's kind of ugly. It kind of looks like a hand with arthritis. It doesn't look very attractive. But it's one of the healthiest foods you could eat. And that poor sweet potato has no one to advertise for it. And then you go down the aisle and you have all those cookies and cakes and all these other products that have all these fancy advertising and look so healthy because omega-3 is added, or zinc, whatever is the darling of the year. So we have a lot of confusion. How did we get there? Again, there's so many reasons, but this is the main reason. We used to eat food that was grown in nature. We used to eat plants. And these plants contain the nutrients our body needs. They're grown in healthy soil. And we used to consume animals and fish that ate plants or ate algae from the sea. So when we consumed those animals or fish, we were too consuming healthier animals because they were eating plant-based diets. And that's how it's meant to be. But something happened in this story known as big food companies that started to process our food. And our food was no longer coming from nature, but it was coming from big industry. And when big industry processed foods, they could do anything they want with it. They could put in vitamins and minerals, they could take out vitamins and minerals, they could add fat. If sugar is unhealthy, they take out a little sugar and they add artificial sweeteners. They could do anything they wish. Of course, there's a lot of benefits, and I'm not saying all processed foods are bad. I'm talking about overly processed foods. And this is what happened. And a lot of these foods that we're consuming have already been basically digested by these machines where they were produced. So when we consume it, it's readily available calories. So globally, when I showed you those statistics about obesity, this is what we see, that globally, as the world is getting fatter and fatter, we also see that global sales of processed foods are increasing. And the ones that concern us most are snack foods, are the frozen desserts, all of these things, and baked goods and beverages. And as they are consuming these products, we're seeing that rise in diabetes type 2 and in obesity. And a lot of these processed foods, don't mistake being obese with not having malnutrition. You could be very overweight and be very malnourished. It doesn't mean you're healthy. At least you have, you're overweight. So I'm picking on one nutrient. I'm picking on sugar today. There's many I could have chosen, but I chose sugar. When I came here and I saw the commercials that the health ministry put out on added sugars and added sodium, I thought they were fantastic. They were two of the best commercials that I ever saw, and I heard they were pulled off and now they're online, so please watch them. Because we need to support everything Litzman is doing. But I just want to make it clear to you that sugar is, to me, one of the worst things that are added to food. Sodium is up there, but I don't have time. And there's so many different names for sugar. It doesn't matter which sugar is in the food. That's the first thing. I don't care if it's brown, I don't care if it's cane juice, I don't care if it's raw, maple. It doesn't matter to your body once you digest these sugars, okay? So there's a difference between sugar that's found naturally in food and sugar that is added to food. These are added sugars. And they're all over the food label. I looked on many of the food labels when I was here. It takes me a very long time to read in Hebrew one package. So for a half hour, I was just looking at 2 products. So I didn't have enough time. But it doesn't matter. And don't be fooled because somebody is using honey. Oh, boy, I have to hurry. Okay, so I just want to give you an idea what happens. Look at this sandwich, a Subway sandwich. Has the connotations of being somewhat healthy for a fast food. Look how many ingredients are in this sandwich, in the bread. Look at that. I didn't circle it, but look how many times the word sugar in some form was written, or salt. This is what we're consuming. This is what we're giving our kids. And one of the worst things is the high fructose corn syrup. It's very cheap. It's in everything. And why is it used? Because it's cheap. It's cheaper than cane sugar. It extends the life of the product. It prevents freezer burn. It's easy to blend and transport. It tastes good. It makes your food brown. And it is in practically everything, including infant formula, by the way. And there is an interesting fact. 600,000 food items in the United States, about 80% had added sugars. You don't know. You would never think that these products have added sugars. Look at them. They're all full of sugar. Everything from ketchup to something like tomato sauce. And I just want to bring out the difference between two things. I took an apple. It has sugar. Sometimes people confuse it. It's the type of sugar we want you to have. It is glucose and fructose, but we need it. And it has 4 grams of fiber, 19 grams of sugar. The fiber helps us absorb the sugar slower. It also contains lots of vitamins and nutrients, apples. And you need to eat 3 apples to get the amount of sugar in an iced tea. You're not going to eat 3 apples in a row because of the fiber we get fuller, and it is so much more nutritious. But take this iced tea. I see so many kids drinking all these sweetened beverages. It has nothing basically but sugar. They throw them some vitamin C, okay. No fiber, quick absorption, doesn't make you feel full, satisfied, and it promotes oral decay. You have to remember that. Sugar is the worst thing for your teeth. It doesn't matter where it comes from. Your teeth love sugar, the bacteria in your mouth. Oh, I just shut off my... Okay, so what do we need to remember? We need to remember that it is important to start when a woman is pregnant is probably the most important time to start to think about this throughout the lifespan. But what we know now is that children learn food preferences based on their experience with foods, and it starts as early as in the uterus. So the taste buds and neurons are starting to pick up the taste within the amniotic fluid of what the mother ate. And that the mother's diet will influence the child, and we all are predisposed to sweet tastes. We have to be, because lactose is sugar, it's milk, and we need to drink mother's milk, so it's natural for us to like the taste of sweetness, or we wouldn't survive. We have to enjoy it. So you've got to remember that food preferences start at an early age. You keep trying. A child will accept a food if they are offered it many times. So you don't give up once and then go to processed food. So it starts here. We promote breastfeeding because breastfeeding does rock. It is critical that we still promote this, make women feel comfortable, that we provide a work environment where women can breastfeed, and because the milk of breast milk changes in flavor according to mother's diet, and children who are breastfed, it seems they're more curious about food, and there's so many benefits. And that baby you hear, she's saying she agrees. Does everyone hear the baby? Thank you, thank you. And then I'm just ending because we talk about the Mediterranean diet so much, and because I spend so much time in Italy, it's something very close to my heart. But this is what the Mediterranean diet really is. We throw out that term too often, and a lot of us just want to think about olive oil and red wine and pasta. It's not. If you look at the traditional Mediterranean diet, it is a plant-based diet. We're talking about plant-based foods, whole grains, fruits and vegetables, good relationship of the omega-3 and omega-6 fats, very little animal food, very little red meat, little dairy products. And the most important thing is they didn't have added sugars. When you look at all the research, we look at all what they ate, let's look at what they didn't eat. In Ansel Keys' research, they didn't eat processed foods. They didn't have added sugars, maybe a little honey on yogurt once in a while. They weren't even overly processed foods, and they had an active lifestyle, and they ate with family and friends. And this is the end, and this is the cycle we need. We need to see kids in gardens, kids drinking water, and kids cooking with their family. My bell rang, so I'm done.